Hello, everyone. Welcome to Global Chamber Accra Monthly Meetup. My name is Ruby Golo, Acting Executive Director, and great to see so many of you joining us from various countries. To get started, just some few housekeeping. I'm grateful if you can keep your microphones on mute unless you are called to speak. But please feel free to use the chat box to post your contacts so others can reach you, and feel free to network as well using the chat room as well. So for those of you joining us for the very first time, Global Chamber, we are in about 195 countries all over the world. Our business is to help companies connect with trusted and business-minded people all over the world without worrying about traveling to those markets because our activities can you please mute your microphone? Thank you. Okay. Our business is usually done virtually, so it gives you the opportunity to meet lots of people around the world. And so if you like what we do today, feel free to reach out to me so that I can explain how you can join the global tribe. So our topic for today is how you can maximize referrals for your business growth. And we are so lucky to have Dave of Collaboration Junkie and a member of the Global Chamber London Metro as our guest. And he will be telling us more about his company and his passion. In this interactive section, Dave will use his 20 years of partnership experience with both global brands and innovative startups to help us not only help you get better referrals more often from your network, but also identify who those ideal partners are. And more importantly, how we can make the most of relationship once they are in place. So Dave, thank you so much for your generous time today. Please take it away from here.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Ruby. And in true Global Chamber style, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. It is a grey afternoon here in the UK, but the sun is shining in our virtual room. So before I get going, what I'm going to say is everything I do will try and be really practical. So hopefully it's things that you can implement in your business right away. By all means, take notes, but I'll share the slides with Ruby afterwards so that if you want those, you can get those. There isn't that much that goes on the slides. They're more to keep me on track than anything else. There will be plenty of time for Q&A, but if you have any questions as you go, please put them in the chat or raise a virtual hand or come off mute and shout. I want this to be as interactive as possible. Another thing that I would say, there's going to be a common theme today. The principles that I'm going to talk about are universal, but I am going to add some extra nuance around how this stuff works when we're working across borders and potentially among different cultures so that we can have introductions without borders. But one of those common themes is going to be around clear communication. I am aware that sometimes I can talk a little quickly. So if I am going too fast or you need me to repeat anything, then please, again, just drop something in the chat or raise a virtual hand and I will be happy to oblige. So I would like to kick off this session with a little bit of a story. Back before the days of LinkedIn messaging, back before the days of AI, back before even the written word. If you wanted to spread the word about your business, you only had one thing available to you, and that was word of mouth. And I would argue that not much has changed. As human beings, we are tribal in our nature, in our want for connectivity, and word of mouth really plays to all of those things, using our network, using trusted relationships, and really leveraging those around us. And the stats back this up. some recent surveys said that 84% of B2B decision makers start that process with a referral, and organizations that have formalized referral programs typically get way more growth. Now, one thing that I do want to point out though, when you see the word formalized, I'm not necessarily talking about overly commercial relationships. We will look into kind of how we reward introductions, but what it can mean is just being much more intentional. For all of us, there will be different levels of relationships that we have, and we leverage those in different ways. And that's what I want to cover today, because I'm sure many of us would have heard this saying, it's not what you know, it's who you know. And this is what all this is about, because only 30% of the companies surveyed had that referral program. And I want to help you be one of those kind of companies that do actually manage to leverage this in a really powerful way. So before I crack on with the nitty gritty, a very quick bit about who I am, why I do this, so that you can understand why it is that you've given up an hour of your time to listen to me. So my background is in business membership. I actually worked for the Chamber of Commerce here in the UK. I then ran my own membership organisation, which was Business Scene. You'll see the logo there. We grew that to almost 2,000 members, almost entirely through referrals and partners. I then ran a business where I had to provide leads in partnership to some of the big global brands you see there. And now at Collaboration Junkie, I help brands identify, nurture and scale referral and partnership opportunities. I've been doing that since just before COVID, and have helped kind of directly helped over 100 kind of businesses, and have many more come through my workshops and online trainings. So I've mentioned referrals and partnerships in a lot already. I just want to very quickly mention what I class as the difference between the two of them. So for referrals, it's from your customers, your clients, the people you network here with at Global Chamber. It could be your friends, it could be your family, it's anyone and everyone, okay? And these are people that potentially just want to refer you and want to introduce you because they know, like, and trust you. And they like who you are, what you're about, and they want to help. Partnerships are a slightly more structured relationship, in my book, where you're working with other businesses that have the shared same end goal for the client and can deliver you your ideal customers on a consistent basis at the ideal time to buy. And so they're two slightly different disciplines, but I'm going to look to give you some advice on how you can make the most of both of these as we go through today. Okay, so I'm going to give a bit of structure around how we do that. And dance is my 5-step framework for partnerships. I'm a big believer in enjoying what you do, and I love music. And so when I came up with my framework for partnerships, there was only going to be one word that signified that. But what we're going to look at today is discovery, which is understanding who your ideal partners are and who your ideal clients are. We're going to look at assembly, which is where you have some systems and some structure behind this stuff to make it a bit more formal. We'll look at nurturing, which is how you build and form really strong relationships with people. Connection is all about how you help people connect you to their audience so that you actually help them to achieve this. And last but not least, we'll look at engagement, which is all about how you actually go out there and find new partners and get more introductions. So does that sound good for everyone? A couple of nods. Okay, brilliant. There is a golden rule with all of this, and that's to make it easy. If you want someone to do something else for you, then the easier you can make it for them to do that, the better. Because most of us are busy people. We live in a busy world these days. And so if things take time, either physically take time or they take up too much brain power, then quite often people will leave them to later on, right? They'll go, I'll think about that another time. And typically, they don't get back round to that even when they want to. So there's going to be a golden rule that runs through everything today, which is to make it easy for people. Okay, so first up, we have discovery, which is all about understanding who your ideal clients are and who your ideal partners are. Because one of the key things around making it easy for people is to be specific. Now, there's a reason why I use this image, and it's not just because I love festivals, but it's because when I was running my membership organization, I was running 3 events a week, seeing maybe 200 business owners, and people would come to me and ask me for introductions. And I'd say, yeah, sure, who do you want an introduction to? And people would say, oh, I can work with any small business owner, thinking they were making it really easy for me to introduce them because I could introduce them to anyone. But the trouble is, when they were that broad, I knew so many people that I couldn't think of anyone. All I saw was a sea of people like this image. And so, whether it's for partners or whether you're looking for introductions, there's a real power in being specific and being really targeted about the introductions you look for. And there's a couple of ways that we can do that. It's either around a type of business, a size of business, a role within a business. Maybe it's a certain stage of a business's journey that you're looking for. But the more specific you can be, the easier someone else will find it to make it. Now, there is a bit of a dopamine hit that we lose here, because when we're broad, everyone says that they can help us, and that feels nice. But the trouble is, rarely are people actually able to, because it becomes too hard. The minute you're more specific, fewer people will go, oh yeah, I know that person. But you'll find more people actually following through because you've made it easy for them to do so. And if you can genuinely work with anyone, then my top tip for how to be more specific is to think about the last really good bit of work you did, where you delivered really good value. But not only that, it was a profitable bit of work for you that you enjoyed, because they're people you want more work from. And this can change. So what the other thing I would say is, think about who you're speaking to. Think about where their network is strongest. If you've got 2 or 3 key markets, think about where their network is likely to be strongest. So if you were speaking to me, then obviously people in the UK, I'm probably going to have a wider network in if we're thinking globally. But so whether it's geographical location, whether it's sector, have a think about where someone's network is strongest, and then be as specific as you can around where they might easily be able to introduce you. And I think where we're looking at potentially working with people in other parts of the world, that specificity is even more vital to get right, because it just helps remove any kind of barriers and language barriers. So there's one thing being specific around who your ideal clients are. When you relate that through to who an ideal partner is for you, there's a little exercise about how you can find out who brilliant partners are for you. And it begins with taking your ideal client and thinking, who else is speaking to these people? Who else has got this shared audience? Now, that may seem obvious, but this is where the specificity comes in. Are they talking to the right size of business? Because you might say accountants are my target market, just to pick someone at trade. But there's a big difference between a solo accountant and a firm of 100 people. So are they talking to the right size accountants? And even within that, you might want to talk to people who are in HR, whereas someone else might be talking to people who are in sales. Now, it doesn't mean that you can't still have conversations, but they're not your ideal partners. You want people who are speaking to the right audience. Linked to that, the next stage is, are they talking about something similar to what you do? Because someone could have the same target market as you, but if what you and the other business do are so wildly different, then the opportunity to refer you and to introduce you in isn't going to come up that often. So is there an alignment? Are you offering things that match up? And the final thing is authority. Is the person you're speaking to, do they hold enough sway, do they have enough gravitas in order for their introduction to mean something? And as a starting point for figuring out who your ideal partners are, that's a really, really simple, basic way. And then what you do from there is you look at what I call a partner value proposition. And if there's one thing that you take away from the workshop, from this webinar today, around partners, it would be understanding what a partner value proposition is. And what it is thinking about all the value that you deliver to someone's client. Instead of thinking about that, thinking about why your partner cares about that. How do you make the partner look great? Because that is where a true relationship starts to form. And I'm going to give an example here. So let's look at someone who builds websites. Let's use a service, for example. If a customer comes to them to build a website, they are not looking for just a really well built website. Ultimately, they want whatever the website is meant to achieve: more sales, more inquiries, whatever it may be. And so if I'm a copywriter, then my value proposition to the website builder isn't I can help your clients have great copy. It's I can help you deliver websites to your clients that convert, right? And it's a very subtle shift in positioning. But what it does is it says to the partner, they understand what I'm trying to achieve, and they're trying to help me do that. And I think if you can find people, other businesses, who you help them deliver the end result their customer is looking for, then that becomes an absolutely perfect partner for you, because they have a vested interest in introducing you. Quite often, we'll have 2 or 3 different reasons why a partner might like us. And what I would say is it's always worth checking with the partner. Never presume, always check with them so that you can so that you can make that clear. And sometimes it might be the value that you can provide is getting them into new markets. If you're looking at kind of leveraging the relationships around Global Chamber, it may be that you do very similar things and you just have different markets. But always reflect back the value that you deliver to your clients, reflect that back to why that's important to a partner. And I promise you, your conversations will flow so much easier than they did before. Right, so I'm going to move on to assembly next, which is kind of the systems and the processes. And we'll be a bit quicker moving forwards, but I really wanted to labour the point on that partner value proposition bit because it's important. So systems and structure of your partnerships and your referral arrangements. I am going to come straight on to how you reward introductions, because there's immediately a difference between referrals and partnerships for me, but it depends on where you are in the world. So typically with partnerships, and where someone it's another business introducing you consistently, I would say there should always be where possible, where they're allowed to have a commercial reward, I would always say there should be a commercial reward in place. Referrals, where it's just people you know introducing you, can be a really grey area just in any one country, but then culturally it can shift so much region to region. So here in the UK, for example, for most people, if it's just people within your network making introductions for you, most people will do that because they want to. And if you try and incentivize them too much, it will make them feel a little bit awkward and you can offend them. However, I'm fully aware that there are other parts of the world where if there isn't something in it for the other party, then they're just not going to do it. That it's almost, and not through people feeling mercenary, just that that's culturally the way things are done. And so what I would say in terms of how you reward introductions is it's really important to understand the person that you're speaking to, what their own personal values are, and how they are influenced by their wider cultural being. And that's particularly prevalent, I think, within the Global Chamber. However, people are a very accepting bunch within this community, so I think you can have open and honest conversations around that. So would love to see in the chat who kind of is more than happy receiving commissions and things for introductions, who doesn't like the idea of it, who sits in the middle. So would love to see some stuff in the chat, and maybe we can come back to that at the end. The second thing I want to cover on assembly is around having the right systems in place to be able to track what happens with introductions that come to your business. every time someone makes an introduction to you, they are not just providing you with a lead, they're trusting you with a little bit of their reputation. And so you need to treat that with the right level of respect. And so being able to, if someone asks what's going on with that person I made an introduction to, you want to be able to tell them very quickly, very efficiently what's going on, where they are in your prospect journey, your customer journey, because nothing breaks trust within a relationship like someone thinking that you've not handled the introduction they've made well. So I would, whether you've got a CRM system, a bit of software, or whether you've got a spreadsheet, or whether you've got it written down on a bit of paper somewhere, whatever system you use, make sure you have a system so that you can build and maintain trust with both your partners and people who make referrals. Really, really vital. Okie dokie. Next piece on the journey, once we know who we want to partner with and we're getting referrals from, we know how we're going to reward them, we have the systems, is around nurturing. And nurturing is all around how we build real deep relationships, be that with our introducers and referrals, or especially where it's our partners. Our partners can be more vital to us than our best customers because they're a constant source of leads. And so we need to make sure we really develop that. One of the key things is particularly in the software space, there can be a tendency to over automate partnerships. But I think it's really important to remember that there is a human relationship at its core. And so it's really important to build on that and maintain that. And one of the key things in any relationship is communication. So communication is key. And there's two things I want to specifically cover here with respect to cross kind of country communications. And the first one is about the need to be clear when language potentially is an issue, and that honesty is the best policy. So making doubly certain that people have understood you, that things haven't been lost in translation, I think is a really important step to take. And I think one that is absolutely fine. Be honest about it. I don't think all too often people can kind of bumble along, but I think being the person that goes, right, we might have a little bit of a problem here with language, so let's just make sure that we iterate everything. Being the person that brings that to the open so that everyone feels comfortable, I think the other person's probably going to thank you for it, because at least you've had the confidence and the courage to make sure that happens. The other thing that I want to touch on around communication is around referral communication, and that's when that piece around trust that I just mentioned about kind of people giving you their reputation to look after. Keep people informed around what's going on with their introductions. Let people know how they've got on. You don't need to over bombard them with information, but let them know at key points of the journey. And again, there'll be a cultural thing here, right? Some people will make an introduction and then go, oh, just let me know what happens at the end. Did it turn into business or did it not? And you don't need to worry about telling me in between. I'm really not bothered. Other people will want to know, be kept up to date much more. And so the safest thing to do here, ask. Ask the person, ask your partners, ask the person that's made a referral to you, how often do you want to be kept up to date? And then it's not really about how often you would want to be kept up to date. Actually ask the other person how often they would want to be kept up to date, and then make sure you do it, essentially. Okay, in terms of partnerships, I want to give 3 really clear things that I would, there's lots of different things that are important in partnerships and building relationships, like partner onboarding and all sorts of things. But I want to give you 3 things that typically I see people not do in partnerships. The first one is set expectations. So be really clear when you're entering into this relationship. What's the purpose of it? Where do we see it going long term? But then even more importantly, what can we do right now? What is the simple thing that we can do that just gets our relationship going? Because so many partnerships fail because they never kick off, because people shake hands or say yes over a Zoom screen or sign an agreement. And then because nothing happens at the start, the excitement fades. And so if you can think of something really simple to do right away, maybe it's do some joint content together. Maybe they're running events, you can jump on a webinar. Maybe it's one client of theirs that you can help. Maybe it's even giving some advice for free just to show them what you're like. Whatever it may be, what's the simple thing that you can do? But setting expectations is really clear. And again, this is another one around that clear communication, that I would document these expectations. It doesn't always have to be a formal contract, but just an email going, right, this is what we're going to do, and this is what our aim are. Do you agree? And that again allows for any potential miscommunication to be completely cleared up if you back your meetings up with something documented afterwards. The next piece is about keep your partners informed. We've already spoken about that one, but lots of people don't do it. And the final piece for me is have strategic reviews. So lots of people, when they've entered into partnerships with people, they'll talk all the time, daily, but they don't take the time to step outside of the day-to-day and engage in just a general conversation around what's going on with each other. Because when you do that, you find more opportunity. I don't know if any of you have ever been in conversations with clients or partners and they've said, oh, we're just doing this thing and we're working with this person. And you go, oh, I did that. I can do that. Did you? And they go, oh, I didn't know. And you're like, you should know because I've told you 3 times before, right? Unfortunately, we're not always front and center in our clients or our partners' minds. And so by having strategic reviews, we're able to find out a little bit more about what's going on in their world and just see where we might either be able to find more opportunity for ourselves or more opportunity for people we know. And the key here is to be genuinely curious. Going into these meetings, not looking to necessarily sniff out business, but to be genuinely curious and helpful. Curiosity is the birthplace of opportunity. So it's just by being interested before trying to be interesting, and being genuinely curious is the real pathway to building relationships and unearthing more opportunity. Okay, so we know who we're partnering with or asking for introductions to. We've got some structure behind that. We know how to build the relationships. Next, it's around how we tie this all together and actually get people connecting us to their audience. And there's 2 things here that we can help. We have partner facing. So this is how you, this is essentially training for your partners. So it's helping them understand who your ideal clients are, when the best time to refer you is, really building yourselves into their process. If the person you're talking to is at the top of a business and they have a team that's actually going to be talking to the clients day to day, how are you educating the clients, right? Don't leave it to chance. Don't wait for it to be third party. Can you go in there and support the teams? Even better, can you be built into your partner's processes so that they absolutely refer you at the right time every time? Maybe when they onboard a new client, there's a range of questions that they ask. Well, is there a question that they could add to that would highlight whether an introduction to you is the right thing, right? I used an accountant as an example earlier. I had a client who worked in HR, and one of their partner channels was accountants. And then whenever the accountant took on a new client, they had a question that they asked: do you have staff contracts? Do you have a staff handbook? And if they said no, well, then they would introduce them to the HR partner every single time. It removes any chance from the relationship and it becomes a process-driven thing. So really supporting your partners is a crucial area. And the other side of it is customer facing. So this is all the ways that your partners could proactively put you in front of their audience. So it's one thing engaging with your partners so that, or any introducers, so that as they come across new people, they can introduce you. But if you really want to open the door to a much wider range of referrals, it's thinking about how you can add value to someone else's audience in a more one-to-many way. So it could be blog posts, it could be things like this where you're speaking to an audience, it could be advice clinics, it could be any way that helps your partner decide to put you in front of their list, their wider audience. Now, there's two things here. I always say you need to make it easy for your partners. So if you're giving them materials that they're going to send out, give it to them in a way that they can copy and paste it. So not that like it reads like it's come from you, so that they can literally go copy, paste, send. The easier you make it for them to do that, the better it will be. The second thing that I want to add here, though, is if you are looking at cross-cultural communications, then have a conversation with them. They understand, unless you really understand that language and that culture, kind of just make sure that your messaging is right. If the first point is cultural messaging, things that mean and are acceptable in one part of the world aren't going to go down as well potentially in another part of the world. But secondly to that is, if you're doing things in a different language, then be really careful on how you get those translated, because there's one thing translating a message, it's another thing making sure that once it's been translated, the intent and the messaging still kind of reads as it should do when it was in its native tongue. So just be really careful around that, both the tone and the cultural pieces around customer facing. But as I said, the easier you make it for your partners to do this, the more likely they are to do it. Okay, so final piece of this framework is around engagement. How do we actually go out there, first of all, and get more partners, but get more introductions? So in terms of getting more partners, the key thing is to remember your partner value proposition. Yeah, when you're looking to approach partners, remember it's all about the value you deliver to the partner, not what you do for the end client. So that's really, really important to remember. If it ever feels like you're pitching and you've got to sell a partnership opportunity, you should stop, because you shouldn't ever have to sell a partnership opportunity. You might have to lead the discussion, but the other person should be getting as excited as you are. They should see that it is a great opportunity if you both deliver value. And if that isn't happening, then you've got your pitch, you've got your kind of your proposition slightly wrong. But if you're just starting out on this, then this is where we bring it all back together. Is the best way to get new partners in the first instance is to look for introductions to them. So I just want to spend the last kind of 10 minutes I'm going to do on my bit talking about how we can kind of comfortably ask for introductions, whether that's for clients directly or whether it's for partners. So the first thing I want to cover is, when do we ask? And I'm doing this one specifically in relation to networks like the Global Chamber, because I'm going to talk about that world culture again, which has come up lots today. But even within, I'm going to use the UK as an example, different personality types will refer people quicker when they first know someone. So I'm quite a good judge of character, I think. I'm quite an emotive person. Quite quickly, if I think I've got the measure of someone, I'll probably introduce them quite quickly to someone else, right? Depending on what the level of introduction is and how involved it is. Someone else who's not quite as outgoing as me maybe would take a longer amount of time before they were comfortable making introductions. But so that's even just within one nation. But then you have the broader national cultures that can vary wildly. So I remember being on a Tel Aviv call where it was all about introductions, and someone please correct me if I'm wrong, but Towson in Israel, pretty much as soon as you've met someone and they like you, they will introduce you to whoever almost immediately. And there's a cultural thing there. Yes, there's variances within it, but they are very happy to make those introductions. But there will be other nations that will be the exact opposite. And so it's really important to understand that, because to not be offended if someone doesn't introduce you, or to cause offense by maybe asking too quickly, or to be offended if someone asks you right away. And just being aware that we all have these differences, and being honest about that, I think, and having clear communication again, I think is really important. Asking the other person when they would be comfortable. or letting someone else know when you would be comfortable, I think is a really valuable step, and only helps people be more empathize more with your own beliefs and your own comfortableness around this stuff. So once we've gone on from there, I'm going to come back to the ask. I'm going to come back to make it easy, and I'm going to come back to be specific. Okay, I cannot stress those two things enough around be really specific about the introduction you're looking for. Are you looking for introductions to a partner or a very specific type of client? Once you've got there, how to ask. This is where it gets a little bit so I would always say keep it natural. So many people I work with, before they ask for an introduction, they almost like take a deep breath. They'll be talking away. Me and Ruby could be talking away, and then and it's almost like you've turned it into a completely separate conversation. Asking for an introduction should feel like asking for a favor from a friend. It shouldn't make it seem to the other person that it's a big deal. So, but natural will mean a different thing to every single different person on this call. And so for some of you, you may have quite formal relationships with your customers and your clients. And so that's how you would ask. But maybe you'd ask a friend in a completely different way. With me, I'm always quite direct and I'm quite friendly about it. But I talk about referrals for a living, so it's quite easy for me to do that. But the key thing here is to be really natural. Because if it doesn't feel natural for you saying it, then you won't. You'll get to the point where you know you should be asking someone, and then you won't do it, or you'll do a bad job of it. So play around with it, but it should really genuinely feel like asking a favor from a friend. The other thing that I really want to add, and this comes back to the trust piece, is that context is key. Even if I know you, if I'm going to open up my network and I'm going to make an introduction, I want to know why you want an introduction to that person. How are you going to add value to them? Because then when I make the introduction, I can say, right, hey, Patrick, let me introduce you to Cliff. I know Cliff from Global Chamber. He was on a webinar. He's asked for an introduction because he does this and he thought he might be able to help you with that. The other thing to add in, by the way, is what the next step is. So I can go, Cliff, I know Cliff's a great guy. I know he'd just jump on a call with you and give you some advice in the first instance. And when you give people context, it means that the person making the introduction can make it so much clearer, which means the person that they want to introduce is much more likely to say yes and have your conversation. Because otherwise, if someone introduces you and it just feels like the other person feels like they might be just going to get sold to, then maybe they don't take the call, or maybe they don't take the introduction. So really give context. It will not only make people more happy to refer you, but the people being referred will feel much more comfortable within that process, because they know that there's some value that's going to be exchanged. So have a really clear understanding of who your ideal referrals are, and for your partners, really understand the value that you deliver to the partner and how you make them look special. Have the right systems and structure in place. Know where if people are making introductions, where they are on that journey, so you can report back, and make sure you've got the right kind of reward structures in place, and be aware of how that might change culturally. Communicate with your partners and your referrers, keep them in the loop, build proper relationships. Help your introducers to introduce you, give them the support and the materials that they need, and then use referrals to get more partners. And when you're asking, keep it natural, and context is key. Put all those together, and I promise you'll be able to leverage not just networks like the Global Chamber better, but your own networks that you've built, however local or however far stretched. Two very quick things from me before we do Q&A, if people have got any. Look, if people want more support with this is what I do. I talk on this stuff, but actually I give people real hands-on support. in person is probably going to be a struggle for pretty much most people on this call, but I do run online group programs that are at the right time for those of you in Africa, at the right time because they're afternoon in the UK. I do one on referrals. You can see the information there. I do another one on partnerships. So if you'd like any information on those, then please get in touch. You can scan that QR code and connect with me on LinkedIn. Or when I stop sharing, I'll drop my details in the chat as well. But for now, hopefully you found that of value, and thank you all for listening.
Thank you so much, Dave. That was very useful tips. I've taken away a lot of points. And so the floor is open. Anyone want to ask a question, clarification? Before then, Dave, I have a question. I know that in the UK and most parts of Europe, data protection is a big thing. So what do you do? Do you need to seek permission before you do referrals?
Right. You've given me a nice easy one here. So the best referrals are when someone knows that it's happening, right? That you know, but I think it depends. Sometimes it can depend on the relationship. So because I'm an introducer of people by nature, I'll often just make the introduction, right? Because I know the two people will talk. I think it's quite different if you're introducing a private individual to a business, then maybe you could gets a little bit grayer. But certainly business to business, you can just make introductions, I think, without because there's a thing called legitimate interest, which is if you think there's a genuine reason for two people to talk, then you're saying that you should do. That said, if you've got partners who are going to put your stuff out to big lists and send people your way, then yeah, you maybe want to be a bit careful. When I ran my benefit business, we had to have people sign stuff to say that anything they sent our way was fully compliant and allowed. But in terms of personal introduction, I think you're fine. And you know what? In 4 years, you're the first person that's asked me that, actually. So I'm surprised it hasn't come up before. Yeah, there might be a more legal. I tend to be a bit more relaxed about this kind of stuff. So then maybe there's an expert who knows better than me. But I think, particularly business to business, I think you're fine. So,
okay,
great question.
Great, thank you. All right, anybody in the audience got a question to ask?
No, right. I'm going to put my details into the chat quickly.
You can unmute, introduce yourself, and then ask your question. Jacob, you want to ask a question?
Sure, yeah. What's, so that's, I think this is a world that I'm still learning, and also a world that I think it's about adapting, right? And so like it's hard to be very static with your answers. And so how do you sort of, in a clear and compelling way, like communicate the complexity of what we often try to do, and also the value, because I think one connection could be worth have a lot of value. And so it's how do you sort of add in that uncertainty into your work and overcome that.
Yeah, so I think it's for all I've gone through a process today. I think at its core, what the process is just a framework for a conversation, right? And for me, introductions are a deeply personal thing, right? And so it's understanding the person that you're talking to, whether it's virtually like this or you're sat opposite in a room, right? And reading that and understanding and using your own intuition as to which bits are they're going to find most valuable, what they and asking. I think there's this kind of asking questions is a underrated piece, because particularly when you're looking at value propositions, Jacob, like the partner value proposition is lovely when it can be this wonderful sentence that hits the nail on the head for our potential partners, right? But typically it's made up of and when I work with people, we go through this, there's a list of things that go in that a partner might find useful, and whether that's cross country or just cross town, different people, because of their own values, they'll grasp onto something else that's powerful to them. And so I think it's curiosity and open, honest conversation is the key to all this. And remembering that yes, we want processes because they help us do the things that we should be doing and remind us to do them, but not at the expense of relationship. Like at its core at the core of a partnership is everyone involved getting value. And then when that happens, 2 and 2 makes 5, right? The sum becomes much greater than its parts. And you only get that when everyone's gaining and giving value. So a really woolly answer there, but hopefully that gives some kind of answer.
Yeah, no, thank you. And one of the best pieces of advice I ever got was from Cesar, just with, unless it's built in, I guess the framework of the connection is like, once you make that connection, unless you're along for the ride, you gotta just let it be. And if it doesn't materialize the way that your vision thought it would or could, then maybe for another day. But that's something that Cesar helped me sort of wrap my head around, because I think I was looking too far to keep like a watch on how that connection will grow and work.
Yeah, and I think it's slightly different if there's a business, if you decided you're properly partnering with, right, then I think it's good to check in on that, right? Have that long-term vision at the start, and then review that. Make sure that there's a question I love at the start of partnerships is what does success look like, and what does wild success look like for you from this partnership, right? And it's good to check back in on that, right? Because it means that we know we're still aiming in that same place. But yeah, for your connections in general, there is that. You never know where they go, and sometimes rushing an opportunity with someone can kill what could be a brilliant relationship, because actually the right thing was 3 years down the road, right? And you've tried to force something. So yeah, I'm a big believer in that. So brilliant, thank you, Jacob. Cheers.
Yeah, I have another question. I recently reached out to somebody on LinkedIn, asking if they could introduce me to someone, and the person insisted on referral fees. So when do we ask for referral fees?
Oh, and then again, yeah, see, this is one that is so grey, right? So if the person's come out and said they want it, well, at least the good thing about that is what side of this they sit on, right? They want a fee for it. You've then got to decide whether you're comfortable paying that fee. Did they want a fee? Presumably they wanted a fee if the introduction turned into work, or did they want a fee just for making the introduction?
Both sides. Let's look at both sides.
Okay. So a finder's fee just for making an introduction, you've got to really decide how valuable that introduction is, and also the quality of. You've got to be really certain of the quality of the introduction, that authority piece, right? How well does this person know the other person? Is it really actually going to mean something, or essentially you're just going to get brushed off? Paying a fee based on an introduction turning into work is a much more common thing. I said in partnerships, it's something that I encourage as long as all parties are comfortable with it, because it helps formalize and elevate a relationship and allows you to have more structured conversations. In casual introductions, much grayer. One thing you can do in terms of do I offer a fee or not, you can mention that you do offer it if someone would like to have a discussion, and then that way, if someone doesn't want one, they can go, oh no, don't be silly, I love what you're about, Ruby, I'm happy to make an introduction, and you've not offended them. Whereas the people that do want fees will go, yes, please, absolutely, right? There's a danger of, if you go out looking for introductions and preemptively go, and if you do it, I'll give you this financial reward. When you do it proactive like that, you can turn some people off. You can offend some people's sensibilities. A good rule of thumb is if someone's in a sales role or if someone's in a commission-based role themselves, there's a good chance that they'll be interested in a commission because that's the world they're from, right? So that there's a kind of an easy rule of thumb. But for me, I would always do it, and I would always position it as a reward, not an incentive. So it's a thank you, right? It's a thank you for doing this rather than a this is the only reason why you're going to do it. Because again, you're less likely to offend someone's sensibilities. So
Yeah, it makes sense. Thank you.
no worries.
Any more questions? We have a few minutes to the top of the hour.
No, we're all good.
Looks like you delivered a very nice one. So
yeah, awesome. Well, I would love people to connect to me on LinkedIn, and if people connect me on LinkedIn, if people want to drop me an email, I'll happily add people to my list. I send something out maybe once or twice a month. It's all value add. So love to connect with people, and thank you for the opportunity. My first time speaking to an African audience, so I can tick that continent off my list. So thank you.
thank you, Dave. We really appreciate you. Do we have our CEO in the audience? Doug, are you there? Would you like to close us?
Yes, Ruby, I'm here. How are you?
I'm well. How about you?
Doing well. I love, there's Hagen behind me from another meeting. I love, Dave, your overall methodology around this because almost nobody gets this right, including me. So I appreciate the reminder of being as specific as possible. This shows up, Ruby, in a lot of our meetings because we always ask the question, who do you want to meet? And I would say even still, about half the people, even within Global Chamber, answer that question too generally. And so so I'd say number one takeaway that keeps getting hammered by Dave, and certainly something that's so important, is be specific, location and title and the person, and getting really down and very granular. And the other aspect that I'd like to emphasize, Dave, that you mentioned that is so important, and that's the process of having a process. And most of us, including me, a lot of times are more reactive and doing things, and then when things come back to me, I respond, but it's hard to have a proactive action to be able to proactively follow up on the most important ones. And so I've started kind of setting aside what are the most important relationships and making sure that proactively, if I don't hear from someone, to reach out. I do that terribly. I want to do a lot more of that, but if you, Dave, or anybody else has some ideas around that, I would love to know more. I know we're out of time, but it would be a great topic for the next time. Ruby, back to you. Thank you for your leadership. Thank you for running this meeting. Very important topic, and thank you everybody for attending today.
Thank you so much. I see other colleagues in the audience. Anyone want to say a few words before we round it up and close? I see Cliff from Kenya. I see Christopher, Texas, Maureen, Morocco.
A quick thing from me, if that's all right, Ruby. And
Yeah,
that's
sure.
just if any of you know other people who are community leaders running events and would like a speaker on referrals and partnerships, then I'd love an introduction if you thought today was valuable. And that, by the way, ladies and gentlemen, is how easy it is to ask for introductions. So there we go.
Sure.
I realised I didn't do my own introduction bit. I thought I'd better get that in. It would be a bit ironic if I didn't ask for an introduction. So.
I think one important thing, Ruby, is that I know we have another meeting starting. Cesar, are you there? What's the logistics of that? Is that on a different Global Chamber Zoom number? Oh, Cesar, are you there? he may have already gone over. Elisa, are you there? Do you know what's going on? Because their meeting it's back to back. Elisa, are you there, or Cesar?
I think they're all on the other meeting by the sounds of it.
Uh-oh. Okay, so I think I guess since I don't say Cesar and Elisa is not responding, if that's, I'm not sure who that. Oh no, they're both in the call.
Hey, Doug, I'm here.
Okay, so isn't there a meeting that's starting right now?
Yes, that's right, and that's what I think we're using the other Zoom to that, but I can't
Okay.
check because this one is my Zoom, and so the meeting is still running. So I guess at least I'm on top of it.
We're seeing behind the scenes of a well-oiled machine here, aren't we?
Yeah, yeah. And we have back to back today. So, but I guess it's the other room is open already.
Okay, very good. But I'm gonna drop off. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, everyone. Cesar, are you able to share that link? Just in case, for those who are interested in joining the next one.
It is in the chat already. I sent it.
Oh, okay.
I
Brilliant.
put it is the one in exporting services.
Yeah, how to export services. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you all
Sounds
for
good.
coming. Our next meeting will be in April. And that's the last Tuesday, 30th of April. So watch this space. And thank you all for your time. All the best. Keep in touch.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.